And live from Mumbai, Argentina, and Brussels, it's ZN Live. That's right, we're very excited today because we're going to talk about a project, a topic that we're all passionate about, and that is travel. And for this, I have a very special guest, Diogo, who is an expert at traveling. He's worked also in the NGO sector, in communication, and in social entrepreneurship, involved in a project called WSA from the United Nations promoting interesting projects. And we have Julie, account manager for ZN, who is involved in ETC. Now, I want to go to you first, Diogo, because we're currently involved in a campaign with you on travel. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about this campaign and what is it doing for you?
So thank you, Zlatan, for the invitation. It's great to be here to share my expertise and also knowledge with the others and the community that you have. And regarding the travel campaign that we are currently managing, so it's our campaign that is focusing in Eastern Europe. And basically, to give you some background, this was a special initiative that we conducted with Z10 because we wanted to put special focus on countries that are neighbor with Ukraine because they were, by research, they were shown as more impacted when it comes to tourism. So we waited a bit because we also want to assess how was the market to see if the destinations were changing or not. We can see now that the situation is not as bad as it was in the beginning of the war, also because the conflict escalated in other ways. But now, basically, more or less, what we are doing is we have 4 travelers or 4 influencers, as you want to call them, and they are making content creation around Europe. So we came up with 3 itineraries, and in the end, they got together in Budapest. So it was a nice experience and also a nice digital experience to do and to see the engagement when it comes to real community. And that's it.
I think it's fantastic when we have people who are sharing their own experience of a place. They're going around, sharing some clips, sharing some stories. I particularly like the guy with the bagpipe. I think it's interesting and weird. Julie, tell us a little bit. What is your highlight of this campaign? What are the bits, the takeaways for you?
So honestly, I think what was very interesting about this campaign in particular is that the 4 influencers were traveling at the same time. So we not only saw a lot of engagement with their audiences, but they also engaged very much with each other. So before the trip actually kicked off, we did an IG live, and as Diogo said, they also then met up all together along their itinerary. And I think it was really, really great to see that, to see them interacting together, to see them engaging together, to see them doing activities together. And it's actually the first time that we have done something like this with numerous influencers traveling at the same time, and then actually being able to connect with themselves, but also connect with the locals. And really, the content that we've seen come out of that has been super, super engaging, super fun. So yeah, in that sense, it's really been very nice to see the fruits of that.
Yeah, and I think that what we're really seeing now is a kind of maturity of people online who help you travel. If you think about it, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't have that. When we choose a destination now, we think, let's go online, let's find somebody that I trust and try to learn more about where I'm going to go. And I think it makes a huge difference. I went to Iceland, and there was a YouTuber that had a channel, created a map on Google, and it really helped during the experience. We were traveling around seeing that. Now, I have a question for you, Diogo, which is one question from Daniel. Unless I think we've lost Diogo for a moment, so I'm going to come back to him. Here we are. So, Diogo, the question is, are you naturally curious, historically curious, or creatively curious? And more generally, what is your favorite kind of travel destination maybe in the last summer or the last 6 months?
I was actually trying to answer the question on the comments, but I didn't manage to log in. So I think that's why it went off.
No worries.
I'm definitely more creatively curious. Basically, the 3 hashtags that we came up with Z10, it's the 3 main communities that we want to build. during our digital strategy. So basically, the Creatively Curious stands for cities. So cities in Europe, it's basically what drives me through when it comes to visit. And then you have the Naturally Curious, that it's nature, and the Historically Curious, as the name says, for history. So I'm the creatively one.
And any specific destination you've been to recently that you would recommend people go and check out, or something that you particularly like?
So for me, I would say that Portugal, it's always like a destination to go, but I'm also Portuguese, so I'm also a bit biased when it comes to that. So I would say that recently I was in Italy and I was in the Veneto region, and I really love it, like Bologna. It was really, really, really nice. The food, it's really, really nice. How people interact with you, it's also like, yeah, it's like you feel kind of at home, and at the same time you have this feeling that you are not actually traveling, but you are just part of the landscape.
Yeah, and in fact, this summer with my family, we drove all the way down to Portugal, through Spain, and we stopped in Pamplona, actually, on the day of the bull run, by complete coincidence. So that's a great kind of plus of a road trip, because you never know where you're going to end up on the way, and we ended up in Portugal. And what I find really interesting, and I think it's part of the ETC campaign, is to kind of go outside of the main places that everybody goes to. And I honestly think, as a traveler, somebody who loves traveling, it's so much more interesting when you're not just going and seeing the Eiffel Tower. No disrespect to the Eiffel Tower, it's great, but you've seen it. What you want to do is go other places, discover new things. So I think that's really important. Julie, what is your most recent favorite destination?
So I have to say, I really, really love Greece as a country. And I think in line with that, I really enjoy Athens. I think it's such a beautiful city. It's super interesting. Not only the history is very interesting, but also the city itself. I really love Greek culture. I love Greek food. I think most people would say that they really love Greek food. So yeah, I would have to say Greece in general, Athens more specifically. And I also just think that Greece is a country, when even as a traveler, you go there and people are extremely welcoming, extremely kind, extremely nice. And I feel like they enjoy having you there, and they feel very like proud that you decide to travel there. So there's that. And then I also have to say that I have a soft spot in my heart for Madeira, because I was there for 6 months at some point in my life. Maybe this was about like 2 years ago or so. And it's also such a beautiful island. The nature is incredible, really, really incredible. I would recommend anybody to go there for the hikes and for all the nature that Madeira has to offer. It's a very beautiful destination as well.
Yeah, I was actually in Athens just a few weeks ago, and we went to visit the Acropolis and then the museum, and we had a guide, and we didn't have a huge amount of time, and we said, look, we have a few hours, and the guy said, no, you need 4 hours for the thing. And we said, look, we can't really do this. And she said, no, you must. And she was so persistent, and it was, she really said, look, I don't care what you have to do, I need you to listen to the whole thing. So a lot of passion for a place. And I think, again, that's what makes things interesting when you're traveling. Now, travel, of course, has changed massively. We've just had a huge pandemic, which made everybody stay at home, which was then, created a kind of revenge tourism, where people kind of traveling a lot since then. And then we have Ukraine. We just have a horrible war in Israel, creating a lot of uncertainty around things. Diogo, where do you see travel landing now? Are we kind of back to something normal, or are we still in a very uncertain space?
So I think we are not in an uncertain space, because somehow I think Europe is reassured as a continent, and I think the experience that we have here to offer, it's actually what drives people to come. And we are actually seeing that people want to come and they want to stay longer. So our strategy is also aligning with that now. We want to attract travelers, but travelers that actually pass more time in Europe, that have more time to enjoy Europe, rather than short-term visits. And then the other level that I would say is that it's super important to also bring sustainability into it, because now it's with the European Green Deal, with all the politics pushing the agenda, and finally we are there and we are making the path to go there. We are also seeing that this regenerative tourism, it's actually a thing that has to happen, right? And at the same time, after COVID, we start to see that the tourism it's recovering and we are going to the same levels, but when it comes to long haul, for example, it's still not there. So we can say that we have massive tourism and we have like a lot of people coming to Europe, because you can even see that this summer we were not prepared again for all the people that were coming to Europe. And this includes airports, includes hotels, includes everyone that works in the travel tourism industry. But then it's also important to have that in mind, that we are recovering and we are going to the same levels, but we also need to do in a more conscious way or more sustainable way when it comes to the options. And I think we can see there that the whole industry is trying to reinvent themselves to go in that direction, which I think it will be the next way for tourism.
Now we have a comment from Daniel saying, this last summer I visited Cancho Rona, an ancient Tartessian ruins complex located in Extremadura, a totally historically curious experience. So we'll share that with you. But coming back to your point, when I did my road trip, actually, I was driving an electric car, as part of a sustainability approach, but it creates its own challenge, because of course you need to figure out where you're going to charge, whether the hotel has a charger. And I mean, we don't mind because that's part of the experience, but it's interesting how sometimes when you're discussing this with hotel owners and saying, look, I kind of need a plug because then I can't move. So I think there's an awareness that's slowly growing there. And I have a question about you. How ready do you think the industry is for this new kind of tourism? And the second question is, I think there's also another kind of tourism, which is people who combine travel and work, because they might go to a place, work a few days, then come back, or even stay longer. I think in Portugal, especially in Lisbon, we're seeing digital nomads. So how do you see the sustainability trend being adopted by the industry and this new trend of nomad tourists?
So I think when it comes to sustainability, we still have a really long way to go. There's no enough infrastructure to actually be ready to be sustainable at the moment, but that's also like part of our strategy. For example, it's also a thing that we want to go towards more behavioral tourism. So we want to change the mindset of the travelers, and when you do it by de facto. So it's kind of like there is no planet B. There is actually just this way, and this should be the way that it is. And I think when it comes to politics, the European Commission is actually creating the funding and the space to actually develop that. But it's still a long way to go, as you were saying, Phil. For example, you can try to be sustainable, but then sometimes you also regret about being sustainable because there are other options out there. And you are like, so what should I do? I want to be more sustainable, but that also means that can impact the way that I travel. So it's not so linear to say we will just go in this direction. But I think we are doing that work. I think that work needs to be done because we also need our planet. And we can see now October, for example, Brussels, it's still sunny, which is strange because normally Brussels in October, it's already like rainy. And you can see the impact of the global warming in that scale. And then from another point, you were mentioning the digital nomads. I think that's also an important part of the strategies of the countries when it comes to tourism, because we need to attract more talent. We need to attract younger talent. And for example, Portugal, as you were mentioning, I think it's a great case study because they created a program that actually allows to attract people that works and travel. So for example, you could stay in Portugal and have, for example, if you want to declare your taxes and base yourself there as a digital nomad. You can stay for longer, so you can see the sustainability trend and also the strategy there. And I think it's super important nowadays to attract the talent that you can to your country, even if they are working for companies that are not related directly with Portugal. They are also bringing income and they are also bringing added value to the destination. And that's important to develop, tourism in Europe.
No, absolutely. And I think also just adding on to your points, Diogo, what we also with our campaigns, try to do is really promote the fact that whether you're just a traveler that is on holiday for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or somebody who's staying a little bit more long term, is to really respect the local life, the local culture, the places that you are going to, the nature that is around you, and come as somebody that wants to understand and learn and know about how things work in the places that you're going to, and take into account all of these like sustainability factors, even though maybe sure the infrastructure may not be 100% there, but what can you do on your travels, whether as I said, as a bit more of a short-term traveler or as a longer-term traveler, what can you do and how can you contribute in the best way possible? And I think there is definitely an individual responsibility. We all have an individual responsibility, but I think there is also definitely a responsibility of of corporations and the sector and the structure as a whole, right? So we all play a role in this. And I think it's important for everybody to play their part and do their part in this if we really want this to, progress at the speed that is needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, going back to the concept behind the campaign, and I honestly think it's a way of life. It's not a campaign. It's just
Absolutely.
thinking about traveling as an experience, as an adventure. That's why, everything cannot be predictable and kind of organized and all that. You need a little bit of research. And if you're going to be sustainable, you have to explore how you can do that. And it's not always going to be kind of prepared for you. But the more you try to understand the local place, I think that you're visiting, the more interesting it is. And that's why I think those people online who share knowledge, like, oh, check out this amazing forest or this lake or this thing that other people hadn't seen. When we were in Iceland, there was a little stream of hot water that was behind a city, and it wasn't yet on the maps. So it was just something you could go and see, and you saw that thanks to this person having shared it. So it's great, and you have this very intimate conversation or at least input from people who know the place. Now, coming back to these new tools that we have to travel, we can travel with Google Maps, we can travel with tools to kind of book different places, etc. When you enter this kind of profession, Diogo, if somebody wants to join communication today and the tourism sector, what are the skills that you think they need?
So I would say that the first thing would be you really need to be eager for travel, especially because when I started, it was during COVID. So as you can imagine, promoting tourism during COVID, it was not a thing. No one wanted to hear. So starting as a communicator, especially in social media, when there was a travel shaming, when there was this kind of situations, it can be challenging. So also working in the tourism field can be challenging, especially when you need to promote actually secondary destinations. So when you think about Europe, you think, as you said, Paris, or you think about Barcelona, or you think about the main destinations. But actually being behind and being actually the educator in terms of social, to show people that there are actually other destinations that are not that packed as the common destinations that we are used to, and that they could go and travel to. And then I would say that it's really creating or bringing this sense of community. I think it's super important when you are a communicator that you actually understand your community and you understand what does your community needs and wants to hear from you. So you kind of like, for sure, this is a challenge, especially when you have a page that has 200K people, because you never know what do that people want to see. And even sometimes you are surprised as a communicator But I think mainly it's the resilience that you have towards communication, because sometimes it can be challenging when your community doesn't answer as you were predicting to. Then understanding your community, and then, as we all know, trying to achieve our KPIs, which is super important when you are a communicator as well, but towards through all of this that I mentioned until now.
Yeah, and I think it's really, communication is conversation, especially on social media. You're actually learning from your audience, and you're exchanging, and that's what makes you understand them better, and then you can adjust your stories. Okay, now we have time for a few recommendations. Roll jingle. And now I'm going to pass it on to you, Diogo, to say what is your recommendation for our viewers this week?
So my recommendation this week, it's actually a book. It's called Shantaram. It's really a hard reading, but I really love it because it's basically about a trip to India. I don't know if you read it, Phil, but especially if you are in India, I think you should really read it, because by reading it, I was never in India, and after reading the book, I wanted to go to India to explore everything that I read there. So yeah, I think people can just check it online if you have the time. It's called Shantaram, and it's really worth it. So yeah, please go ahead and read it. Good reading.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. Actually, Bombay has changed a lot since Shantaram. So just in case it's modernized tremendously. There's an Apple TV series that didn't do so well based on the book, but the book I think is really fantastic. But I think you need to visit India to experience it. It's another destination that it requires different mindsets. So Julie, what is your recommendation for our viewers?
So for me, it would be honestly anything by Brené Brown. So whether it's one of her books, Dare to Lead, or Alice of the Heart, she's also done different podcasts, and she also has like a very famous TED Talk that probably many people know. It's called The Power of Vulnerability. And yeah, I think she's a great author, a great speaker. And every time that I watch anything or read anything of her, I feel like I'm always like in awe of the things that she says and the things that she communicates. So really, I would say anything by Brené Brown.
Fantastic. And my recommendation is actually a new book by Shane Parrish called Clear Thinking. And I think you have it back to front. Basically, it's very interesting. He wrote several books on mental models. This is about kind of approach to decision making, to thinking, to biases. It just made it on the top of the New York Times bestseller list. He has a fantastic blog called fsfarnhamblog.com, I think. So that's my recommendation. That's all we have time for. Enjoy the sunny Brussels and I guess Mumbai and Buenos Aires. And I will see you all online. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.